How evil are Avatar characters? Alright, let's start with our boy Aang. If we're ranking Avatar characters on an evil scale, this dude is basically sitting at 0. Like, the guy's so nice he doesn't even want to step on flowers. Sure, he's got his moments. Remember when he went all glowy-eyed Avatar state on those sandbenders who stole Appa? But even then, he was just having a totally understandable freak-out over losing his big fluffy friend. The worst thing Aang probably did was hide that map from Katara and Sokka when Bato showed up. Dick move? Yeah, kinda. Evil? Nah. Just a scared kid worried about losing his new family. He spends most of his time trying to save the world while also finding ways not to hurt people. This man really said, I know everyone's telling me to kill the Fire Lord, but what if I didn't? And then actually figured out another way. Bottom line, Aang's about as evil as a basket of sky bison puppies. The kid literally became a vegetarian because he couldn't handle the thought of hurting animals. Not exactly top-tier villain material there. Next, Azula, gonna put her in evil tier. This girl is basically running a masterclass in being a villain. First off, she's got zero chill when it comes to, well, everything. Like when she's introduced, she's literally making her friends do dangerous stunts and laughing when they fail. That's not just mean girl behavior, that's straight up sadistic. What really cements her evil status? It's how she straight up enjoys causing fear and pain. Remember when she tortured that Kyoshi warrior for information? Or when she shot Aang with lightning while he was in the Avatar state? She doesn't just do evil stuff because she has to, she actually gets a kick out of it. The girl's idea of a good time is mentally breaking down her friends so they're too scared to betray her. Azula isn't just throwing random fireballs, she's calculating every move. She manipulated an entire secret police force, conquered Ba Sing Se from the inside, and nearly took out the Avatar. And she did it all with a creepy smile on her face. The fact that she's only 14 and already this masterful at being evil, that's why she's in the top tier of villainy. Sure, by the end she had a total breakdown, but even then she was terrifying. Like, her version of losing it was still trying to kill everyone around her. That's commitment to the evil lifestyle right there. Now Bato is solidly chilling in the good guy zone. This water tribe warrior is basically what you'd get if you turned loyal friend into a person. When we first meet him, he's recovering from some nasty burns he got while fighting alongside Hakoda, already showing us he's the type to take one for the team. Here's a kid who straight up hid information from his friends about their dad. And how does Bato react? With understanding. No grudges, no drama, just straight up, I get it, you were scared. That's some high-level emotional maturity right there. Plus, the dude's got mad respect for tradition and community. He's all about passing down water tribe customs to Katara and Sokka, but not in a pushy way. He's just trying to keep their culture alive while their dad's off fighting the Fire Nation. When he reunites with the kids, he's not trying to replace Hakoda. He's just there to support them and maybe share some stinky sea prunes. Now let's talk about the human explosion factory himself, Combustion Man. This dude's sitting in the somewhat evil tier, and here's why. Is he trying to kill kids? Yeah, definitely not cool. But is he cackling about world domination while he does it? Nah, he's just doing his job, which happens to be exploding stuff with his forehead. To be honest, he's basically just a really intense contractor. Zuko hired him to track down the Avatar, and that's exactly what he did. No more, no less. He doesn't have some personal vendetta or evil master plan. Dude's not out here trying to conquer nations or manipulate people, he's just trying to get his paycheck. The guy doesn't even talk. He's not spouting evil monologues or trying to justify his actions. He shows up, tries to explode his target, and if it doesn't work, he just keeps trying until something stops him. Like, you know, his own rebounding explosion. He's like if you turned professional into a terrifying weapon of mass destruction. So yeah, attempting to blow up the Avatar and his friends definitely puts him in the evil category. But his pure dedication to just doing his job, without any extra evil flair, keeps him from reaching top-tier villain status. Okay, time to analyze the OG Airbender, Monk Gyatso. This dude is so firmly in the good tier, he makes other good guys look sketchy. First off, he's probably the only person in the entire Air Temple who actually got that Aang was still just a kid. While everyone else was freaking out about prophecies and Avatar training, Gyatso was like, yeah, but have you considered letting him play some airball? The man managed to be both a spiritual leader and had an amazing sense of humor. Like, this is a guy who used his airbending to cheat at Pai Sho, and throw cakes at the other stuffy monks. In a temple full of serious faces, he's out here pulling pranks and teaching life lessons at the same time. That's not just good, that's straight up legendary. But when the Fire Nation attacked, this peaceful monk went full beast mode. They found his body surrounded by tons of Fire Nation soldiers. This man believed in peace and harmony, but when it came down to protecting his people, he wasn't afraid to throw down. He literally died defending his home and his beliefs. Hakoda's good status is pretty much undisputed. This guy had to make the toughest call any parent could face, leaving his kids behind to go fight in a war. But he did it because sometimes being good means making hard choices for the greater good. In battle, he's innovative and brave, coming up with strategies that let his smaller forces take on the Fire Nation's massive navy. Sokka and Katara are out there saving the world, and that kind of courage and sense of responsibility doesn't come from nowhere. Even when reunited with his kids, he respects their choices and growth, treating them as the capable warriors they've become. He manages to be both a leader and a father, showing that true strength isn't about domination, but about lifting others up. Hama, the OG bloodbender. This woman's story is a masterclass in how trauma can twist someone from victim to villain. She invented bloodbending while imprisoned by the Fire Nation, which, honestly, is metal as hell. But then she took her justified anger and went full horror movie on a random Fire Nation village, kidnapping innocent people and locking them up in a cave. Her actions come from a place of pain and survival, which keeps her from top-tier evil status. The woman literally had her entire culture stripped away and spent years in a cage. But her response was to turn around and cage others, using her power to terrorize people who had nothing to do with her suffering. Teaching Katara bloodbending wasn't about passing on knowledge. It was about spreading her own trauma, trying to turn another waterbender into someone as broken as she was. The Dragon of the West is basically what happens when you max out the wisdom stats in character creation. This tea-loving firebender started as a full-on Fire Nation general, but did a complete 180 after losing his son. Instead of doubling down on the whole fire and conquest thing, he was like, maybe I'll just make some tea and drop life-changing wisdom bombs instead. Iroh's goodness shows in how he handles Zuko's whole everything. He never forces his nephew to change. He just patiently sips his jasmine tea, occasionally drops some proverbs, and waits for Zuko to figure things out himself. This man broke out of prison by getting swole, saved countless lives, and still had time to perfect his tea brewing technique. He's living proof that being good doesn't mean being weak or boring. Zhong. Talk about a guy who's seen enough. Zhong was so done with the Fire Nation's whole deal that he straight up deserted and became the first person to ever be like, nah, I don't think I will, to Fire Lord Ozai. This dude is so traumatized by firebending that he lives in a river. That's commitment to the firebad lifestyle. Jet. Started out as discount Robin Hood with a side of war crimes. Ended up slightly less problematic. Jet's the poster child for cool motive, still murder. This guy was ready to flood an entire village of innocent people just to get at a few Fire Nation soldiers. He's got trauma for days and channels it all into his trademark hook swords and questionable decision-making. But here's where it gets interesting. Dude actually starts to change in Ba Sing Se. He tries to be better, even if he's not great at it. Sure, he still jumps to conclusions faster than Sokka jumps at meat, but he's making an effort. By the end, he's fighting alongside the Gong against the real bad guys. His journey from everyone from the Fire Nation must die to maybe genocide isn't the answer shows that redemption is possible, even if you start out as a problematic fave. Let's talk about the most normal person in Ba Sing Se. Jin is just out here living her best life, asking out awkward tea shop employees on dates. This girl saw Zuko's horrible attempt at juggling and still thought, yeah, this is boyfriend material. Her goodness comes from pure authenticity. No hidden agendas, no manipulation, just genuine interest and kindness. She even took Zuko's weird, my uncle is a juggler lie in stride. In a city full of secrets and brainwashing, Jin's just trying to have a nice date and see some pretty lights. Judy. Talk about someone who didn't sign up for this. Judy's stuck in neutral tier because, let's be real, she's not making any choices of her own. The woman's been hit with the Lake Laogai special so many times she probably thinks her name is actually Judy. Her creepy smile and repetitive phrases aren't evil. They're the result of some serious brainwashing courtesy of Long Feng. Can't really put someone in good or evil when their brain's been scrambled like morning eggs. June is what happens when someone decides bounty hunter is a viable career choice and actually makes it work. This woman doesn't care about good or evil. She cares about whoever's paying her bill. Need to track down a waterbender? Sure. The Avatar? Why not? Her giant mole creature needs feeding and Shirshu poison antidote isn't cheap. She's not out here trying to save the world or burn it down. She's just trying to make a living while looking incredibly cool doing it. Katara. Hope Speech McGee herself, Katara's goodness level is off the charts. This girl learned bloodbending and was like, nah, not for me. That's self-control right there. She's got enough trauma to fill the entire Southern Water Tribe, but instead of letting it turn her bitter, she channels it into protecting others and giving inspirational speeches. Sure, she can be a bit intense, looking at you, "You're not my mother" scene. But her heart's always in the right place. Whether she's healing allies or threatening to end Zuko's destiny permanently, everything she does comes from a place of wanting to protect others and end the war. King Bumi. The mad genius of Omashu is what happens when you combine 112 years of earthbending expertise with chaotic good energy. This guy waited a century to free his city because he played the long game. That's patience level 100. Sure, his methods are questionable, making Aang solve weird challenges while Sokka and Katara slowly crystallize. But his heart's in the right place. Bumi proves that being good doesn't mean being boring. Sometimes it means cackling madly while launching flaming rocks at Fire Nation troops from your mail delivery system. Earth King Kui is basically what happens when you keep your ruler in bubble wrap for 22 years. This dude thought his bear was rare because it was just a bear. He's good in the way a sheltered puppy is good. Pure, naive, and completely unaware of the world outside his palace walls. Can't really blame him for the state of Ba Sing Se when he thought crop shortages meant less mangoes at breakfast. Once he finally learns the truth, he steps up and tries to make things right, even if he's way out of his depth. His goodness comes from innocence and a genuine desire to help once he actually knows what's going on. Avatar Kyoshi took "speak softly and carry a big stick" and was like, how about I create an island and live for 230 years instead? Her methods were about as subtle as her height, which is to say, not at all. This woman's version of conflict resolution was, if you're not going to respect these borders, I'll just make new ones. She created an elite force of warrior women and was ready to throw down with anyone who threatened peace. Sure, she straight up killed Chin the Conqueror, but in her defense, he was trying to conquer her peninsula. Kyoshi's good, but it's the kind of good that comes with a body count and property damage. Ba Sing Se's worst civil servant is proof that you don't need to be a firebender to be pure evil. This guy turned brainwashing into a government policy and gaslit an entire city faster than you can say, there is no war in Ba Sing Se. He's like a middle manager who took climbing the corporate ladder way too far and ended up with a secret police force and a brainwashed bear-owning puppet king. Long Feng's the kind of evil that hides behind bureaucracy and cultural heritage. He doesn't need to shoot fire when he can just have you taken to Lake Laogai for some vacation time. The man tried to orchestrate a coup while acting like he was just doing his job. That's evil with a side of performance review. Mai begins as the definition of whatever. She's just along for the ride with Azula because being evil is slightly less boring than sitting at home being a perfect nobleman's daughter. She doesn't particularly care about the war or politics. She just wants to sigh dramatically and maybe throw some sharp objects at people. But she levels up to good tier when she finally stands up to Azula at the Boiling Rock. Choosing to save Zuko and betray the scariest person in her life? That's character development you can sharpen a knife to. Now let's talk about the human embodiment of evil itself. Phoenix King wannabe Ozai. This guy isn't just evil. He's basically running a masterclass in villainy. Let's break down why he's the absolute worst. First off, let's talk parenting. Or as Ozai calls it, creating traumatized future war criminals. This man looked at his 13-year-old son and thought, you know what would be great? Burning half his face off in front of an audience. He turned his daughter into a weapon instead of a person, and straight up banished his wife for trying to protect their son. Father of the Year material? More like Father of the Fear. But wait, there's more. Most villains have some kind of tragic backstory, or at least a semi-reasonable motivation. Ozai? Nah. This dude was literally like, my brother suffered the loss of his only son. Guess I'll use this moment to try to steal his birthright. He saw his father's grief as an opportunity for promotion. That's not just evil. That's next-level, opportunistic cruelty. Let's talk about his grand plan, the one that puts him in a tier of evil all his own. While other villains might dream of conquering the world, Ozai was like, what if we just burn the entire Earth Kingdom to the ground? He wasn't trying to rule more people. He was planning a literal genocide. He wanted to use Sazan's comet to wipe out an entire continent of people. That's not regular evil. That's going down in history as the worst person ever evil. And his response when confronted with his actions? Zero remorse. When Aang, essentially a child, comes to stop him, Ozai doesn't even consider that he might be wrong. He doubles down so hard he calls himself the Phoenix King, because apparently Fire Lord wasn't a grandiose enough title for someone planning mass murder. Even after losing his bending, he never shows a hint of regret or understanding. He's so committed to being evil that he'd rather rot in prison than admit he was wrong. What makes Ozai the most evil character isn't just his actions. It's his complete lack of humanity. He has no tragic backstory, no sympathetic qualities, not even a decent reason for his crimes. He wasn't corrupted by power. He was awful before he even got it. He's not even creative with his evil. He just takes his father and grandfather's war and thinks, how can I make this worse? At least Azula has the excuse of being a traumatized teenager. Ozai's just a grown man who chose violence every single time he had a choice. The cherry on top of this evil sundae? He's not even a good villain in the charismatic sense. He doesn't have Azula's strategic brilliance or Zhao's hammy charm. He's just a dude with great hair who decided that burning the world was a solid retirement plan. He's proof that sometimes the greatest evil isn't complicated or tragic. Sometimes it's just a terrible person with too much power and zero redeeming qualities. Pakku. Started as the poster boy for OK Boomer energy, ended up actually learning something. Master Pakku begins his journey as the kind of guy who thinks women belong in the healing huts and men belong in the fighting rings. His sexism isn't just old-fashioned, it's actively holding back half his tribe from reaching their potential. But then, Katara shows up, throws down in an epic ice battle, and suddenly Gramps remembers he used to be engaged to her grandmother. Character development achieved through the power of family drama and water whips. Once he gets over himself, Pakku actually becomes a decent person, training Katara and eventually heading south to help rebuild. Sometimes good is when you admit you were wrong and do better. The master swordsman who looked at a water tribe teenager with zero sword experience and was like, yeah, this is going to be fun. Piandao is what happens when you put all your skill points into being awesome and also wise. This guy was so good at swordsmanship that the Fire Nation just had to deal with him leaving the army because, what were they gonna do? Fight him? He judges people by their character, not their nationality, and he turned calligraphy into a martial art. Plus, he saw Sokka's lion turtle drawing and still agreed to train him. That's the kind of acceptance only a truly good person can offer. Avatar Roku is what happens when your best friend becomes a war criminal, and you spend too long trying to see the good in them. His biggest flaw wasn't being evil, it was being too nice. Roku had the power to stop Sozin before the whole "let's commit genocide" plan got off the ground. But he chose mercy every time. He's the definition of good intentions paving the way for a century of war. Even as a spirit, he's trying to fix his mistakes by guiding Aang. His goodness is unquestionable, but maybe if he'd been a little less good and a little more proactive, someone could have told Ozai no before he turned into supreme evil overlord. Sokka. The certified plan guy of Team Avatar starts as a guy who thinks being sexist is a personality trait and ends up as the strategic genius who helps save the world. Sokka's goodness comes with a side of character growth and meat jokes. This dude went from not being able to catch a fish to leading the invasion on the day of Black Sun. His moral compass is always pointed in the right direction, even if his boomerang doesn't always come back. He's proof that being good doesn't mean being perfect. Sometimes it means making mistakes, learning from them, and becoming the kind of person who thinks schedules are sexy and invasions need bathroom breaks. Plus, he gave up his science skepticism to ride a giant flying bison. That's character development. Sazin, the OG Fire Lord of bad decisions. This guy took, "My friend said no to world domination" way too personally, and decided to commit genocide. Sozin watched his best friend Roku die in a volcanic eruption, and instead of helping, he was like, "Great, now I can start my war crimes." He's the architect of the Fire Nation's whole sharing our greatness propaganda, which is just colonization with extra steps. Dude literally wiped out an entire culture because his expansion plans got rejected. Talk about not handling rejection well. His evil legacy lived on for 100 years, proving that sometimes the worst villains are the ones who start the fire, not the ones who keep it burning. Suki's out here leading the Kyoshi warriors at age 15, teaching Sokka about respect, and breaking herself out of the highest security prison in the Fire Nation. Her goodness comes from a place of strength and principle. She's protecting her island because it's right, not because someone told her to. She even forgave Zuko for burning down her village, which is some next-level good person energy. Plus, she rocks that warrior makeup better than anyone else in the Avatar universe. Teo. Sometimes being good is about making the best of what life gives you. Teo took a tragedy that left him unable to walk and turned it into an opportunity to soar. This kid made the Air Temple his playground, proving that you don't need to be an airbender to claim the skies. He's living proof that being good isn't about what you can or can't do, it's about how you choose to live. Plus, he welcomed the Avatar gang with open arms and zero judgment, even though they basically crashed his home. That's hospitality goals right there. The boulder speaks about the boulder in the third person because the boulder is neither good nor evil. The boulder is just entertainment. This wrestling star is basically what happens when you put muscles, showmanship, and questionable naming conventions in a blender. He's not out here trying to save the world or destroy it. He's just trying to win Earth Rumble 6 and come up with increasingly dramatic ways to announce his moves. The boulder's moral compass points directly at whatever makes for the best show. Toph Beifong, the original tiny but mighty earthbender who invented metal bending out of spite. Toph's goodness comes with a side of attitude and zero concern for anyone's feelings. She's proof that being good doesn't mean being nice. Sometimes it means calling out your friends, throwing rocks at bad guys, and scamming scammers because they deserve it. Her moral compass might be a bit crooked, but it always points toward helping her friends and punching bad guys with rocks. Plus, she invented a whole new kind of bending while trapped in a metal box. That's not just good, that's legendary. Tai Li. Started as Azula's cheerful enforcer, ended up as a Kyoshi warrior. Talk about a career change. Tai Li's journey from neutral to good is basically what happens when you realize your bestie is actually a toxic boss. She's not evil, she just wanted to be liked, and happened to be really good at chai blocking. Her turning point comes when she chooses Mai over Azula at the Boiling Rock, proving that sometimes being good means standing up to your scary friend who can shoot lightning. She went from hitting pressure points to finding her own moral compass, and she did it all while walking on her hands. Ursa. The Fire Nation's most intense mom did what she had to do to protect her kid, even if it meant becoming a face-stealing fugitive. Ursa's the definition of good parent in a bad situation. When your choices are, let your husband kill your son or poison your father-in-law, she picked option B and ran with it. Sure, she kind of forgot about Azula in the process, but when your husband is Ozai, perfect parenting isn't really an option. She chose her son's life over her own happiness, then spent years living with a new face just to keep him safe. That's not just good, that's Mother of the Year material in the worst possible circumstances. Xin Fu, the sketchy earthbending fight promoter who thought kidnapping a blind 12-year-old was a solid business strategy. He's not trying to take over the world or anything. He's just trying to make a dishonest yuan by any means necessary. His moral compass points directly at his wallet, and he's not above exploiting kids or chasing the Avatar across the Earth Kingdom if the price is right. Not the evilest guy in the show, but definitely not someone you'd want managing your money. Yue. The Moon Spirit's backup plan turned her tragic destiny into a literal glow-up. Yue's goodness isn't just about being a nice person. It's about sacrificing everything to save the world. This princess looked at the Moon Spirit dying and was like, "I got this," and turned herself into the actual moon. That's not just good, that's superhero-level sacrifice. She spent her whole life knowing she was living on borrowed time and still chose to use her last moments to save everyone. Plus, she had to deal with Sokka's awkward flirting and still remained gracious. That alone qualifies her for good tier. Master Yu, the earth-bending teacher who's more interested in collecting tuition than actually teaching anyone to bend. Yu is what happens when you prioritize running a business over actually being good at your job. He's not evil. He's just incredibly mediocre and totally fine with it. This guy taught Toph the most basic earthbending moves for years, without realizing she was a prodigy who could probably teach his entire school. Then he teamed up with Xin Fu to kidnap her for money, proving that sometimes neutral just means you'll do whatever's most convenient. He's not trying to hurt anyone, but he's not trying to help either. He's just trying to make it to his next paid lesson. Zhao, the man who thought killing the moon was a solid career move. This guy's so evil he makes other villains look reasonable by comparison. Let's break down his particular brand of awful. First off, there's his obsession with going down in history. Everything Zhao does is about making a name for himself. Consequences be damned. He's not content with just catching the Avatar. No, he has to do it in the most dramatic way possible, like burning down an entire forest or hiring pirates to blow up a prince's ship. This man literally tried to assassinate Zuko, a teenager, because he saw him as competition. That's not just evil, that's pathetically evil. But his crowning achievement in the worst ideas ever category, deciding to kill the moon spirit. Even Iroh, who's usually all about peaceful solutions, was ready to throw down over this. Zhao was so caught up in his Fire Nation superiority complex that he thought disrupting the entire world's balance was a reasonable move. He didn't just want to conquer the Water Tribe. He wanted to destroy their very source of power. That's the kind of evil that makes other evil people step back and say, whoa, maybe we should chill. He's not just doing evil things for power. He's doing them because he can't stand the idea of anyone else succeeding. He'd rather destroy the world than admit someone else might be better than him. His final moments, refusing help from Zuko during the Ocean Spirit attack, perfectly encapsulate his character. So proud, so stubborn, and so evil that he'd rather die than accept help from someone he sees as beneath him. Finally, Zuko. The poster child for It's Never Too Late to Choose Good. Zuko's journey from somewhat evil to good is basically the show's second main plot. Starting out, Zuko's operating on somewhat evil energy. He's hunting down a 12-year-old kid and burning down villages in the name of restoring his honor. But here's the thing. He's not evil because he wants to be. He's evil because he thinks he has to be. This guy is literally the product of an abusive father, a banished mother, and a psychotic sister. His moral compass is so messed up that he thinks capturing the world's last hope for peace is his ticket to daddy's love. What makes Zuko fascinating is his constant internal struggle. Even when he's being evil, he's showing moments of goodness, like when he saves Aang from Zhao under the blue spirit mask, or when he tries to protect his crew during the storm. He's got this weird honor code that makes him both a terrible villain and a really conflicted good guy. He'll tie Katara to a tree to use as avatar bait, but he'll also dive into freezing water to save Aang's life. His transition from evil to good isn't a smooth one. It's messy, complicated, and involves betraying his uncle, aka the only person who actually cared about him, in Ba Sing Se. Zuko had to hit rock bottom, get everything he thought he wanted, and then realize it wasn't what he needed at all. That's not just character development, that's character demolition and reconstruction. By the end, Zuko's not just good. He's actively working to undo the evil he and his family caused. He goes from trying to capture the Avatar to teaching him firebending, from wanting his father's approval to standing up to him and calling out the Fire Nation's propaganda. His journey proves that being evil or good isn't about where you start. It's about the choices you make along the way. The best part about Zuko's character is that his goodness doesn't erase his struggles. He's awkward, he makes mistakes, and he still has a temper. But he chooses to be good, even when it's hard, even when it means giving up everything he thought he wanted. That's not just character redemption. That's the kind of good that comes from understanding what evil really costs. And we are done. What changes would you make in this list? Let me know. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe to the